Hey everybody, Digital Dean here with another Marvelous Designer 5 tutorial. Today I'm going over sewing. So in order to sew my pants pattern together, I'm going to use a combination of segment sewing and free sewing. So starting off, I'm going to use segment sewing, which simply just sews an entire line to an entire line. So I'm going to do the inseam to its own inseam. You can see that our seam lines are there. I'm going to do the outer seam, and I'm going to make a mistake, and I'm going to flip the seam. So what's going to happen is if you were to sim this, it would flip itself around and go all crazy. So in order to fix this, number one, you can just select the pattern and right click and say reset 3D arrangement, and it's going to set everything back to where you had it in the 3D view. Go over to your Edit Sewing button, select it, hover over the seam that you need to reverse, right click and say Reverse Sewing. And that way it'll straighten it back out. So I'm going to continue on with segment sewing to crotch to its opposite crotch, crotch to opposite crotch, and then I'm just going to sew these darts together. I added these in to help it conform around the body of the pants. So I'm going to press space to simulate, and it looks pretty good. But now I want to go one step further and add a waistband to it. So I'm going to stop the simulation, and instead of just trying to guess at the length that I need and causing a lot of headache for myself, I'm just going to use a tool that's already ships with the edit pattern. And if you select a line, you'll see a blue number. That will add up the more you, or that will add the length of each line together that you select. So if I was to shift and select the next line, you'll see that it added them together. And I need to go all the way around to the front. So I'm at 325.8. So that's the length that I need for one half of my waistband. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my Create Rectangle pattern. I'm going to click on an empty spot. It's going to bring up this little window. I'm going to type in 325. For the width and for the height, I'm going to do about 50. Say OK. And it'll automatically create a new pattern with pretty much the exact size that I need to sew them all together. So I need to move this down. So what Marvelous Designer usually ships with is that the gizmo is set to screen coordinates, and what it does is just locks it to the camera, and XYZ will be in really weird positions, and I think it gives for really weird movements. What I do is I go to Gizmo, Preferences, Gizmo, and then I change it to World Coordinates, and that will give me a locked X, Y, and Z axis. So I'm going to move it down, over, and in, and then I'm going to select it, Control C, Control V, move it over to the other side, move it in. And because you can see that it's dark on one side and light on the other, that's essentially the way that the normal is facing, is like the easiest way to put it. So you can just flip horizontally, or you can just select it and just spin it around by hand. Either one works fine. So if I need to use free sewing, because if I was to try to segment sew this together, it would just segment sew the entire thing together, and it would try to segment this longer section to each this smaller section and this smaller section. So it's going to give you a really weird simulation. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. I'm going to select free sewing. Now there's two ways you can do this. You can either go small sections to long section, or long section to small sections. I'm going to show both, starting with small to long. So just go over to your point that you want to start at, click it, go over to the point you want to finish at, click that. Go to your long section, the point you want to start out, click it, you'll notice that a blue dot shows up. That blue dot is equal length of what you're sewing from. So you click it, and you'll see it pops up in our 3D view as a perfect match. So we'll continue. Go to the 103 section. Click, click, click where we ended, and then click on the blue dot. That's the next section. And the last section. Click, 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 and then these are, it's actually, I think it was like 0.8 longer, so it actually shows up on this line, but we're just going to end at this corner because it's really not going to make that much of a difference. So that's one half of it, and let's go to the other. This time we're going to do long to the individual segments. So in order for this to work, you need to click and press and hold shift the entire time. And so click, press and hold shift, click, click while still holding shift, click, click, still holding shift, click, click, still holding shift, and click. And as soon as you let go of shift is when it starts to sew it all together. So as you can see, I did it in the wrong order, which happens frequently because it's a bit confusing getting it all together. So we'll just go back over and delete sewing and try it again. So click, shift and hold, click, still holding shift, click, shift, click. And as you can see now, it's automatically spacing out where it's sewing, which is a really, really neat function for it. And then click, still holding shift, let go. It'll sew it all together. I'm just going to segment sew these together and run a simulation. And there's our waistband. Now a few things to look out for while doing this is anything that you free sewed, it will scale with anything that you increase or decrease. And an easy way to check that is if you hover over a seam, you'll see a couple numbers that pop up. The first number is the distance between how long the sections are. So the first section is what we sewed from, and the second number is what we sewed to. So right now it stayed at 191.4, but it's increased to 127.7, and before it was at 91.4 because it was a perfect match. And so that was scaled up, and scaled down you'll see the first number, what it was from, and to is 53 and 91 with a difference of 37. So if I press Control Z, it'll bring him back. And if we check it again, this time it's blue. Blue is good and red is bad. It'll give you really bad simulation and dynamic properties if you leave it in the red. So that's another thing to look out for while you sew. Same thing with these down here. If it's too far out, it'll give you a red number. Now it's blue. The difference is 10. So I'm not sure exactly when it goes to red. I think it might be like 25 or something. Yeah, it's like 41. But that's something to look out for when you sew, and something for you to double check if you're getting like weird pinching or bad deformations. It might be because your seam lines are either too small or too large. So if you needed to move this up because like, oh, I need extra space on my belt, well, you have to redo the sewing now. You have to redo it all. So and you'll notice that when I get to the end, it'll stop short. Before it went on to the next one, but right now it just stopped right there. So if I run the simulation, now let me delete, I guess it doesn't really matter. You'll notice that I have this this pocket, this little gap right here, because of all this space on the pattern that doesn't have anything sewn to it. So that pretty much covers segment sewing and free sewing. I hope you guys liked the video. Hope you learned something. Well, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know how I can make these videos better for you guys. And I'll catch you guys later.